Are you thinking of moving to the west side of Calgary, but you're unsure which neighborhood is the best fit for you? It is a very diverse area, from bustling inner city neighborhoods to large suburban homes on huge lots, from cliff-facing homes to wooded areas and rolling hills. With fantastic amenities and private schooling, this is one of the most sought-after regions of the entire city. My name is Ryan Gillard. I'm a local realtor here in Calgary with Real Broker, and in this multi-part video series, I'll be breaking down the entire city into its different geographic regions, and in this video, I'll be exclusively targeting the west side of Calgary. So I'll be taking you out into the streets. I'll be going through every single neighborhood of the west side. I'll show you what they look like with some photos and videos. I'll give you some pricing information, and I'll also let you know my honest assessment of all of the pros and cons of living in those areas. Now, it will be a lot to take in, so let's get started. All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about living on the west side of Calgary. And before I get into each individual neighborhood, I'll just give you a quick rundown of the entire region here. And so whereabouts is the west side? So here's downtown Calgary, and the west side refers to this orange peachy type area that you see right here. Now if I pull up the Google Maps, you can see it a bit better. So downtown Calgary right here. I would say for the most part, the dividing line between inner city and the west side would be Crowchild Trail, which you see right here. Now there are a couple neighborhoods like Killarney, Shaganappi, which are classified as inner city, but I will cover them in this video as well. They've always seemed more west side to me. So everything west of Crowchild, this whole green area right here is a giant ridge. So everything south of this ridge, all the way to this green patch over here, and the south dividing line will be Glenmore Trail right here. For the most part, there are a few neighborhoods, Discovery Ridge and like Lakeview over here. So basically everything you see right here. And the Calgary Real Estate Board also includes Valley Ridge, Crestmont, and there's a new neighborhood over here called Medicine Hill as west side, even though I think these neighborhoods belong in northwest Calgary, but I will cover them in this video as well. So that's what's considered the west side. So why is the west side of Calgary so popular? And I would say it is for many reasons, but what immediately comes to mind when I think about the west side is, great suburban living. So you got very nice homes on big lots, rich area. It's a very affluent area. I would say between the inner city of Calgary and the west side, they're about neck and neck in terms of price. So it is the richest part of Calgary. It's very clean, it's very safe. You've got excellent access roads to get around in and out of Calgary and to downtown. So you got Bow Trail goes right into downtown, 17th Avenue, Richmond Road, Glenmore, Sarcee. So it's easy to get in and out of the area. And I would say my favorite thing about the west side of Calgary is how scenic it is. This is by far the most scenic part of the entire city. So if I pull up the topographic map of Calgary, you can see that the western half of Calgary is way more hilly, and it's in the foothills, and the eastern half of Calgary is very flat. So this is the west side right here. So a lot of these homes they're perched on these cliffs, they're in wooded areas, there's a lot of rolling hills. So it's just a very scenic neighborhood. And lastly, it has excellent access points to the Glenmore Reservoir as well. So if you're a nature lover and you like the scenery, I would definitely consider the west side of Calgary. And I'll go over all these points in more detail, but that's just a quick rundown of why the west side is very popular. All right, so let's get into each individual neighborhood. And I'll start off in Discovery Ridge, and I'll make my way back into the inner city from here. So Discovery Ridge right over here on Google Maps. So downtown Calgary is right here. And Discovery Ridge is this pocket right over here. It's not a very big neighborhood, as you can see. And I'll pull up the satellite view. So this is a very cool neighborhood. It looks like a completely different city. It looks very alpine, lots of woods, very scenic. And the general idea behind this neighborhood it's just very nice homes backing onto the green paths in the woods, is how best to describe it. And it's a pricey neighborhood. The average price in Discovery Ridge is about $1 million, and they can get as high as $2 million for a detached home. But I would say the bulk of the activity is between $900,000 to like $1.3 million. This little section that you see right here, these are all condos. So this is a condo complex, and it's pretty cool. As you can see, they back right onto the woods here, so it's a very private setting. These condos, about $200,000 to $400,000 in range. And I sold one last year. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath for about $336,000. As you can see from the photos in the back here, it's just very scenic and private neighborhood. And the one drawback to this neighborhood, I would say,
is if you have little kids, I would be a bit cautious because you can easily get lost in these woods. As you can see from the video here, they're pretty thick, and you can easily get lost in here. And I'm sure there are bears and cougars and moose. And I've seen moose in the city limits of Calgary, so I'm assuming they're probably in here as well. That's good and bad. If you like nature, it's a great neighborhood. But if you have little kids, I would be a bit cautious. That said, the neighborhood does have an older vibe to it. I think it's more of like a retirement neighborhood, just from my experience. But a very cool neighborhood nonetheless. And yeah, that's all I can really say about Discovery Ridge. It's not a big neighborhood. Just the general idea is fancy homes backing onto the woods and green paths. And the last 2 points that I'll mention about Discovery Ridge is you don't have to worry about developments in this area because there's nowhere else to go. So this whole area that you see right here is First Nations land. So I don't know if they're going to be developing it anytime in the near future. So this is all probably going to be kept as it is right now. And the last point, if you're into golf, there's a large number of golf courses around this neighborhood. There's Glencoe, there's the Elbow Valley, and I think Pine Brook over here, and there's a whole bunch more around the area. So if you're a golf fan, it's a good neighborhood to put on your list. And that's all I can really say about Discovery Ridge. So moving on, let's talk about Springbank Hill. Next up is the neighborhood of Springbank Hill, right over here. One of my favorite neighborhoods in the entire city. So Springbank Hill, and I'll show you where it's located. So everything south of 17th Avenue that you see right here, and everything west of 69th Street. So everything in this little pocket over here is classified as Springbank Hill. And to get from here to downtown, you just take 17th Avenue right down into downtown, or you can take Bow Trail. It might be a little quicker, actually. Maybe 15 to 20 minutes, so it seems like it's far away, but it's not that far from downtown. Just a short commute. And there's a lot of stuff going on here in this neighborhood. So get the satellite view. One second. So you can't really see it from the satellite view, but it's a very hilly area. A lot of these homes have beautiful views of the mountains, and there's ridges and valleys and stuff like that. So I would say the top part, it kind of flattens out, this part over here, but there's a summit kind of in the middle, I believe, and it kind of, you see these branching ridges that come down, and a lot of these homes are backing on these ridges and stuff like that. So it's a very scenic neighborhood, lots of rolling hills. And it can get very pricey. I've seen homes in this neighborhood go for like $4.5 million. I would say the bulk of the activity is like 900 to 1.2 or 3. Is a good rule of thumb. In the south part here, where this video is being filmed right now in the background, I think it was filmed right around here. A lot of these homes can go for like 550 to 700. So there are pockets that are more reasonable than some of the more expensive areas. And this section over here are some villas that go for like up to 600,000-ish, give or take. So in terms of price, these areas on the west side, there's always micro pockets. And you can just see the lot sizes here compared. So these guys compared to these ones over here. So these are like the 500 to 750 type properties. And the ones that are with the bigger lots would be the more typical ones that you see in this neighborhood that are like 900 to 1.3. But again, there are sales that go up 3 or 4 million. So and there's everything in between. And the last thing I'll mention here, I'm just waiting for this to load. So if we go back up here closer to 17th Avenue, we have a C-train stop right over here. So you can take this C-train line all the way into downtown. Ambrose University, I believe, is like a Catholic university. And we have the Westside Recreation Center. This is one of the best gyms in the entire city. It's got everything. It's got like a hockey rink, pools, the fitness centers. It's got everything. And Ernst Manning High School is this section that you see over here. And then Rundle College is this section right over here. This is a private school, one of the more famous ones in the city. So there's a lot going on in Springbank Hill, one of my favorite neighborhoods. And if you're thinking of moving to the west side, I would definitely put a star beside this neighborhood. It's very popular. And one last point before moving into Aspen Woods is, so by the high school over here, this pocket right over here, there are some condos and townhouses that are going from like 200,000 to 400,000, give or take. So there are some options for everybody in Springbank Hill. Okay, so let's talk about Aspen Woods now. So Aspen Woods, one of the more popular neighborhoods in the city and one of the more expensive ones as well. So Aspen Woods is everything south of Bow Trail, which you see right over here. Everything west of 69th Street. and everything north of 17th Avenue. So this pocket right over here. And so when I think of Aspen Woods, I think of rich homes with private schools would be the best way to summarize this neighborhood. So in terms of schooling, so we already talked about Rundle College, which is over here. The Ernst Manning High School is over here. And there are some other private schools. You have Calgary Academy right here. And there's also Weber Academy over here. So in Aspen, we have the shopping center right over here. And then we have 85th Street right here. And I would say 85th is the separator between, pricey and ultra pricey. So in 85th, you'll see a lot of condos and townhouses in the southern part. And the condos are going from like 250 to say 500. And the townhouses are going from like 400,000 to 800,000. So it's still pretty pricey. And the detached homes, I would say they're going from about 900,000 to 1.1 million. Definitely pricey, but not nearly as pricey as the homes on the east side of 85th Street. Now, if we look on the east side of 85th Street, so this section over here, and not this area, this is actually Strathcona Park, a part of Strathcona Park over here, so we'll talk about that one later on, but this section over here that we're talking about, the average price is about 1.3 million, but there are pockets that are way more expensive than that. Like the estates area over here, I've seen there was one sale that went for like $10 million. So this is one of the more expensive neighborhoods in the whole city. And again, lots of green paths. You can see all the different woods scattered throughout the area. Just a very, very desirable area, expensive, lots of private schools, very scenic, good views of the mountains as well. And not too far from downtown as well. You can easily jump on the Bow Trail and be downtown, let's say 15 minutes or so. And so if you got the money, I would definitely put this on your list as one of the more popular neighborhoods in the city. Next up on our list is the neighborhood of West Springs, so this section right over here. And West Springs is located in between Old Banff Coach Road, you see right here, Bow Trail, and the dividing line is somewhere around here. So this is Coach Hill right over here, and then everything that you see here is West Springs. One of those neighborhoods, it's hard to describe in a few sentences. It doesn't have like a uniform look to it, and there's different micro pockets here and there. Like there are homes that can go as low as 500,000, and there are homes that have gone over $3 million, and so and everything in between. So it's a difficult area to describe in just a few sentences. I'll pull up the satellite view here, and lots of different micro pockets throughout this neighborhood. So this pocket over here would be more reasonable in price. This will be like 500s to 700s most likely, but it's pricey over here in the West Grove area. So this will be around the average price range for the area, which is around 900,000. This section over here, it gets newer as you go west. So this is the older part of West Springs, and again, it can be very reasonable in price. But there are pockets, like over here by the pond. There's some ultra expensive properties, and if you go further west, you can see these massive lots around here. These sell for incredible amounts of money. And this is a giant shopping complex over here. Not giant, but it's a fair-sized shopping complex. And there are a lot of condos and townhouses around this area as well. And I'd say they go from like 300 to 500 to 600,000, I would say. And there's also some semi-detached properties over here. So it's got a bit of everything. And it's not quite as scenic as say like Springbank Hill or even Aspen. It's a bit flatter. Very nice neighborhood though. Again, the average price is 900,000 or so. And that's all I can really say about West Springs. A good family area, nice and quiet, easy access points to downtown. But it's one of those areas like you have to know which pocket that you want to move into because the price can change wildly. All right, so the next neighborhood that we're going to talk about is Cougar Ridge. This section right over here. And if I zoom in, so this is Cougar Ridge right here. And there's also a little small patch of townhouses and condos over here. Now it looks a bit isolated, which it is at the moment. So right here is a ridge. This is Canada Olympic Park. So this is where the ski jumps are, as you can see in the background. So you can't just drive from here to here at the moment. It's a bit tough. But what's happening, if I zoom out far enough, this is the ring road. So Highway 201 is called Stony Trail. It goes all the way around the city. And it's complete all the way up until about Glenmore Trail. And they're still constructing this portion right here that will eventually connect. And as far as I know, it comes out kind of where the ski jumps are. And it's really going to open up this part of Calgary to the rest. which I think is a good idea. And then Cougar Ridge won't be quite as isolated. All right, so let's take a closer look into Cougar Ridge, and I'll pull up the satellite view here. So the area, compared to West Springs, it definitely has a bit more of a uniform look to it, in that it's all basically like two-story properties, more humble of an area. Like the average price here is like $750. So there's tons of properties that are like between 500 to say 800,000, and they're almost always like your classic suburban two-story that you see in Calgary. And this pocket over here is a bunch of townhouses, and I'd say these range from like say 300,000 to 500,000 tops. And we have Calgary Waldorf School over here, another private school, I believe. And not much to say. Like, it's just a very safe, quiet, family-friendly neighborhood, and it's not nearly as crazy in price as the other homes, or other neighborhoods that we went over. There are pockets here, like some of these big lots that are backing onto the ridge. They might go for like 1.3, 1.5 million tops. And there are another pocket over here, this Cooley Lane. These homes are definitely pricier than the ones you see over here, and pretty cool. Like, they're right backing onto this ridge, so they have spectacular views, as you can see from the video in the background. And the last point I'll touch on here is there are more condos and townhouses over here. So I sold one of these in the summertime on Cougar Ridge Landing, and it was a luxury kind of townhouse, and it sold for about $860,000. And you can see from the photos I've got in the background, it's a pretty nice property. Good for people who are like downsizing and stuff like that. And there's a condo complex over here as well. But mostly it's a detached single-family neighborhood, but there are pockets of condos and townhouses as well. And again, very easy to get to downtown Calgary if I pull up the map here. So if you're in Cougar Ridge, just take Old Banff Coach Road to connect to Bow Trail, and you could be downtown in like 15 minutes, I would say. That's about all I can say about Cougar Ridge. Just a very family-friendly, safe neighborhood, and not nearly as crazy in price as the other neighborhoods that we went over. All right, so the next neighborhood that we're going to talk about is Patterson. So this section right over here, and on the Google Maps, is this section right over here. So Old Banff Coach Road. The separation point from Coach Hill to Patterson is probably like right around here. So this whole section right over here. Now I'll pull up the satellite view. So this is a giant ridge again. So it's got spectacular views for most parts of this neighborhood. And I'd say there are two parts to the neighborhood. Actually, maybe three parts to it. This section right over here, this long winding road, this is Patterson Boulevard. And so this is the top of the hill, and it's going downhill the entire time, as you can see from the video in the background. And at the very bottom of the hill are brand new homes being developed. Some of these can be pretty pricey, up to say $2 million. And these homes, especially the ones backing onto the ridge side of the road, they can have spectacular views. I sold one here maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. It was 298 Patterson Boulevard, and it sold, I think, at the time for, say, $955. It would sell for more, just our market continues to climb here. This one was a bit dated. It was an 1,800 square foot bungalow with a walkout basement backing onto the ridge. Spectacular views. And this Patterson Boulevard, it is getting a bit dated, except for the brand new homes at the bottom, though. They're about, say, 20, maybe pushing 30 years old now. And the rest of the neighborhood, it kind of reminds me of a ski bowl. So this ridge kind of comes around, and it kind of like a half-pipe sort of look to it. And there's all sorts of houses and condo developments, townhouses, kind of inside how the bowl twists. It's hard to describe, but it's a very cool neighborhood. And so where are we here? So this section over here are some cheap condos. You can get into some of these for like $200,000. So there are options for everybody. Some luxury homes over here. And then as you go down the hill, again, this is very hilly, so you're going downhill the entire time. There's all sorts of different condo developments and townhouses. I'd say a lot of the townhouses are probably under, say, $600,000. And the average price of a detached home, I would say it's about $1 million. So it is a bit of a pricey neighborhood, but there are also options for condos and townhouses that aren't quite as expensive. Broadcast Hill. So if you're curious, this is where most of the radio stations, they broadcast all their music and talk shows and stuff like that. One of the highest points in the city. and excellent views of both downtown and the Bow River Valley as well. So just a very cool neighborhood, excellent views, excellent properties, and very scenic. Next on our list is Coach Hill, this area right over here. And on the map here, so here's Patterson again, West Springs would be over here, and Coach Hill is this section right over here. Very cool area, maybe not as hilly or as expensive as Patterson, but kind of similar. It's an older established area, and I would say there are different micro regions of this neighborhood as well. So up here, there's a giant, it's not a giant, but there's I think 2 or 3 high-rise condos, and the prices in those buildings can range from like $285,000 to over $600,000. And the estates area of Coach Hill is over here, Coach Grove Road. Homes in this area can get to like say 900 to 1.2 million. I would say the homes in Patterson are more expensive and the views are a little better. So Sarcee Trail, you're coming down the hill all the way up, and then when you get to the point around where Coach Hill is, you get more traffic noise and you get more of the road scenery versus you get more of the valley scenery in Patterson. I'd say that's the main difference, but still a very nice neighborhood. Again, 900 to 1.2 million in this area. There are townhouse complexes over here, and they range from a low of 200,000 to a high of 500,000. But I'd say most are probably around the 300,000 mark. And then all throughout the area, there are also detached properties, and I'd say the average is about 600,000. So the houses in this section are not as expensive as the estates area. That's a very good rundown of Coach Hill. Again, it's a very, very cool neighborhood. Older, well-established. I would definitely live there, but I do think Patterson is a bit more high-end than Coach Hill. Strathcona Park is next on our list. Not a very big neighborhood, so I'll pull it up here so you can see it. So it's a bit of a triangular shape. So it starts over here, kind of where 85th and Bow Trail connect, and it follows this green path all the way to the highway and then back up again to Bow Trail. So this triangular shape. And you can see the green path a little better with the satellite view. So again, there's green paths all throughout this neighborhood. So the best way to describe Strathcona Park, is whatever I think about it, is just nice homes that are backing onto green paths. Is the easiest way to describe it. And so there's 2 parts to it. So there's Strathcona Boulevard right here. And on the west side of the boulevard is the newer area. And homes over here are about 800 to 1.2 million. And a lot of them do back onto the green path, as you can see. And the older part of Strathcona, the homes can range from, say, 500,000 to 1 million, depending on like how upgraded it is. And most of these homes are backing onto some form of green path. And this ravine here is actually quite steep. You can't really see it from the map. This is the ravine that actually separates Christie Park, which is this area, from Strathcona Park. And as you can see, there's different townhouse complexes throughout the neighborhood, and they can range from, say, like 400 to 600,000. And the last thing to note about Strathcona Park is that the neighborhood is generally sloped from the west towards the downhill to the east. And a lot of the homes that are facing the city skyline have excellent views of downtown. And the last thing I'll mention about Strathcona Park is it just has excellent access routes. So you have Old Banff Coach Road becomes Strathcona Boulevard, you have Bow Trail, 17th Avenue, Sarcee Trail, there's a C-train stop right over here. So it's just a good prime location. Next up is Christie Park. So this area right over here, and you can see it on Google Maps. So this section right over here is called Christie Park. And on the satellite view, like I mentioned earlier, this ravine is actually quite steep, and it's what separates Strathcona Park from Christie Park. Not an area that we come to all that often as realtors. I think I only counted about 14 sales in the past 500 days. So not a very big area, not too many sales. And I would say the neighborhood is broken into 2 different parts. So the eastern part right here, this is all townhouses, and they range in price from, say, 300 to 600,000. There's a C-train stop right over here, and there's also one over here. The main part of Christie Park is all detached properties. I don't think there's any condos or townhouses in this section, as far as I know. And it's a pricey area. The average price is about 1.1 million, I believe. And they can get a bit pricier than that. I saw a few that were going for like 1.3. And it has a very unique look to it. Lots of brick buildings in this neighborhood, which isn't very common in Calgary. So it's, I think it's a pretty cool neighborhood, especially the homes that are backing onto this ridge, I think are really cool. But there's not too much to talk about besides that. You know, just detached homes with a unique look backing onto the ridge, and townhouses in this section over here. All right, next up on our list is Signal Hill. So this area right here, and I'm actually going to cover Richmond Hill as well. I believe Richmond Hill is just the shopping center component of Signal Hill. So I'll pull up the map here. So that's this huge section right here, one of the biggest neighborhoods in the city. Everything between 17th Avenue, Sarcee Trail, 69th Street, and Glenmore is Signal Hill. And I'll pull up the satellite view here. So the defining feature of Signal Hill is this giant shopping complex called West Hills. This services the entire west side of Calgary. It's got everything, all the big box chain stores, lots of bars and restaurants. Basically anything you could possibly think of is in this big shopping center area. And there's a ridge right over here overlooking the entire shopping complex. Is one of the defining features of the area. This is the bottom portion of Signal Hill. So this is the base of the hill, and then as you go north, it's very hilly all the way up until 17th Avenue. Now, it's one of those areas that's kind of hard to describe because it's so big and it has everything. So in terms of detached properties, the average price is about $750,000, and I'd say they top out around $1.3 million. So it's definitely not as expensive as its neighboring communities like Aspen or what's the other one, Springbank Hill. Towards the south portion, there are a lot of condos around the shopping center areas, and I'd say they are between $200,000 to say $400,000 on average. There are townhouses sprinkled throughout the area, and I'd say the average price of a townhouse is about $350,000 to say $450,000. And there are also a lot of villa-type properties as well, like the old folks' homes. So the area has everything, so it's hard to describe it in a few sentences, but it's just a very hilly neighborhood, very family-friendly, very safe, with excellent access to the shopping center. And again, there are 2 C-train stops along 17th Avenue here. You know, the one drawback to Signal Hill, the era that it was developed is kind of like the late 90s to early 2000s, where you'll see a lot of the oak interiors and a lot of the peachy type pastel exteriors. And it just hasn't aged all that well. But other than that, it's a fine area. So next up is the area of Wildwood, this section right over here, and another very popular neighborhood. Same idea as some of the others. We've got the big ridge right here, and a lot of the homes in Wildwood have good proximity to the ridge, good proximity to Edworthy Park, one of the nicer parks in the city. And it's primarily, actually I think almost all the properties there are older bungalows, big lots, at a good price point. Like the average price in this area is about $750,000, but it can range all the way up to $3 million for some of these homes that are backing onto the park or the ridge. And good proximity to downtown. You can easily just jump onto Bow Trail and take this all the way into downtown. No condos or duplex or anything like that. It's purely a mature bungalow type community. And not too much to discuss other than that. It's a very popular neighborhood, and it's great for outdoors lovers, I would say. So just south of Wildwood is the area of Westgate right here, which we'll cover next. So Westgate is in between Bow Trail, 45th Street, 17th Avenue, and Sarcee Trail. So this chunk right here, not a very big neighborhood. And here's the satellite version. So along the same lines as Wildwood, that it's almost all just mature bungalows that range in price from say $450,000 to $750,000. So not nearly as expensive as Wildwood, but that makes sense because it doesn't have the proximity to the ridge or the park. It's actually a good price point. If you want to get into the west side of Calgary, this might be an area to look at. It's not insanely expensive, but it is a very nice neighborhood. So again, just bungalows between $450,000 to $750,000. And at the south part of the community, right by the C train line, the 45th Street station, there is one condo complex, and they range in price from about $200,000 to $300,000. But for the most part, it's almost all mature bungalows. And again, $450,000 to $750,000, a good price point. Other than that, I think there are 2 schools here. Just a very friendly, family-friendly, safe neighborhoods, and it's got a very good location. Other than that, there's not a huge amount to say about Westgate. So next up, we're going to spin back towards Wildwood and cover the area of Spruce Cliff. So you can see it right here. So Wildwood is up here, and Spruce Cliff is this region right here. So the dividing line between the two neighborhoods is 38th Street right here. And I would say there are two parts to Spruce Cliff. Not a very big area, but there's two distinct parts to it, which you can see a little bit better on the map here. So here we have Shaganappi Golf Course, and there's a lot of condos and townhouses on the eastern half of the neighborhood, which you can see right here, and there's some high-rise condos over here. Some of these condos backing onto the golf course can get pretty pricey. I've seen some of these go for around $1 million. But for the other stuff, like the regular townhouses and condos, I would say they range in value from like $150,000 up to say $400,000. So that covers the eastern half of the neighborhood. Now the western half, just this little skinny sliver over here, is you start to see all sorts of different projects here. Whereas Wildwood was just all bungalows, this part of Spruce Cliff, it was bungalows at one point, but now they're being redeveloped into all sorts of different projects. So you're going to see luxury, like 2-story brand new properties that can go up to say 1.2 or 3, which is very, very common throughout the inner city. You'll see a lot of like 1950s bungalows that have been renovated, and some of those can get up to like maybe $1 million for the renovated ones. You'll start to see a lot of semi-detached duplexes that can go up to say $800,000. And lastly, some of the properties that aren't that fixed up yet might go around say $500,000 to $700,000. So it's like a very typical inner city type neighborhood for these few blocks over here. Whereas Wildwood is just all bungalows. This has a mixture of everything. Would be the main difference between the two neighborhoods. All right, next up is the area of Rosscarrock, which you see right over here. Rosscarrock is in between Bow Trail, 37th Street, 17th Avenue, and 45th Street. Not a very big neighborhood. Very close to downtown. So this area is getting quite a bit busier than the other ones that we've discussed. So from here to get to downtown, once you're on Bow Trail, it's like maybe a 10-minute drive, if that. And so it's a bit of a busier neighborhood. Bow Trail is a busy road, 37th Street is a busy road, and so is 17th. So it definitely has a busier vibe compared to the others. This yellow section over here is a mall complex. I think there's a Walmart, there's like a mall that you can go inside, and there's also like the outside kind of strip malls. And there's also a C-train stop right here, the Westbrook station. All along 37th Street are different types of shops and restaurants, and the same thing with 17th Avenue. So there's a lot of stuff around this neighborhood, lots going on. And in terms of pricing, this area is not nearly as expensive as the other ones that we've covered. I'd say it's one of those neighborhoods that has an equal mix of everything as well. It doesn't have like a uniform feel to it like, say, Wildwood and stuff like that. You'll see everything in this neighborhood. You'll see some kind of slummy looking areas of it as well. Like especially close to 37th Street, there's some condo complexes, and they're kind of like pretty low end, like $150,000 for some of them. So it does kind of have like a bit of a slummy look in this section over here. But you will find some brand new developments as well, like you'll see anywhere as you get close to the inner city. Some of the semi-detached duplexes that are brand new might go for like $800,000. And a lot of the older properties are like, say, $500 to $700-ish. And there's lots of townhouse complexes as well. I saw some that were brand new that were going for like $500,000. So it's got a bit of everything, and it's a very convenient location. Other than that, there's not a huge amount to talk about in terms of Rosscarrock. All right, next up are the three areas of Glendale, Glenbrook, and Glamorgan. I always get them mixed up, but there are slight differences between the three of them. And I'll start off with Glendale over here. And Glendale is located in between 17th Avenue to 37th Street to 26th Avenue to Sarcee Trail. Now, of the three, Glendale is probably the easiest one to figure out, and I would also say it's the nicest of the three as well. So Glendale is I think for the most part, it's almost all detached bungalows. It's a mature neighborhood, and you don't see bungalows being turned into like 2 stories or like half duplexes and stuff like that. I believe the zoning, it's just all bungalows, so they kept it that way. I love bungalows, so this is an area that I would definitely consider. And the average price in Glendale is about $650, and I'd say like it tops out around like 1.2, 1.3. The odd one might go for like 1.5, but for the most part, it's not as crazy expensive as other parts of the west side. And other than that, that's about it. It's a very family-friendly, safe, quiet neighborhood, and it's just all mature bungalows, so it's an easy area to describe. So let's talk about Glenbrook now. So just south of Glendale is Glenbrook, and the boundaries are 26th Avenue to 37th Street, to Richmond Road to Sarcee Trail. So this section over here, good location as well. So again, we talked about this earlier, it's very close to the West Hills Shopping Center. Richmond Road is a good collector road that can take you all the way to Crowchild Trail, which is quite fast to get anywhere north-south in the city. So good proximity to some major routes to get in and out of the west side. The main difference between Glenbrook and Glendale, whereas Glendale was just all mature bungalows, and they've kept that zoning that way where it hasn't changed much, it's just purely bungalows. Glenbrook has a bit of everything. So it has the bungalows as well, but it also has condos, it has townhouse complex, a lot of fourplexes, so it has everything. And it's not quite as expensive as Glendale as well, where the average price in this neighborhood is about $550 for a detached home, so about 100 grand less than in Glendale. And for like a luxury new build detached home, I'd say it's pushing like 1 million as the top end. But the bulk of activity for detached homes here is about 550 to say 700-ish. You'll see a lot of condos throughout the area. I'll pull up the satellite view here so you can see. So here's part of that shopping complex you mentioned earlier. Lots of condo developments over here, down here, all around the edges. And there are some around 37th Street as well that can look a bit slummy, to be honest. Some of these over here are very dated, and they could be pushing, not pushing, they could be around, say, I don't know, like 150 to 250. So there are some cheaper options in this neighborhood. A lot of the townhouses are like, say, 200 to 300,000. And there's even a lot of fourplexes in this neighborhood. So it's good for, like, if investors are looking for like a fourplex, this could be a neighborhood to target. And another good thing to note about Glenbrook is the proximity to Mount Royal University, which is right over here, this big section. And it's depends on where you live, it's walking distance to get from Glenbrook to Mount Royal. And other than that, it's kind of like how Rosscarrock is, that has a mixture of everything, but it's not nearly as busy as Rosscarrock. So it's still a quiet neighborhood. And that's about it. That's how I would describe Glenbrook. A very nice neighborhood, lots of potential, and it's got a bit of everything in it. Let's talk about Glamorgan now, which is this area right over here. And where this is located, so it's everything in between Richmond Road, Sarcee Trail, Glenmore Trail, and 37th Street. And I would say there are two sections to this neighborhood. So I'll pull it up here. So as you can see in the satellite view here, all of these are all condo complexes over here, condos and townhouses, even up here, and some of the new developments down here. There's a ton of townhouses and condos in here, and they're actually pretty good prices. I've seen condos in here from like 150 to like, say, 300 as the top end. And a lot of the townhouses can be good prices as well, like 175 to a max of like 500,000. But the bulk of these are like 175 to say 300,000. So pretty good prices. And then you can see in this section over here, it's primarily older bungalows. The difference between Glamorgan and Glenbrook is that you'll see a lot of like the new developments in Glenbrook, like the 2 stories, and you'll see duplexes and stuff like that. Glamorgan is just primarily older bungalows, and they're not being redeveloped into brand new like 2-story homes or half duplexes. At least not yet anyway. So if you're an investor and you're looking to buy and hold something, and this might be an area to look into, because eventually I think this area will become more similar to Glenbrook. But at the moment, it's primarily just bungalows on this side and a lot of condo developments on this side. In terms of the bungalow prices, the average here is about $550, give or take. And most of the activity here is kind of like $450 to $700. And it's a good area to get around it, because you got Glenmore Trail right here, Sarcee Trail, Richmond Road is quick, and it's actually very close to Mount Royal as well, which is right over here. But other than that, there's not a huge amount to say about Glamorgan. Let's talk about Lakeview now. The southern tip of the west side here is Lakeview. I'll pull up on the map so you can see it a little better. So Lakeview right over here. So this section south of the Glenmore Trail. And obviously it's called Lakeview because it's tucked into the Glenmore Reservoir right here. This is the reservoir. This is North Glenmore Park, this big green blob. Weaselhead Flats, kind of like a marshland where the river kind of meets the reservoir. And this big section right over here that you see is actually First Nations land. So one of the cool things about living on this part of the city is that this First Nations land, it actually restricts the development of the city. So if you're living in places like Discovery Ridge or Lakeview, there's probably not going to be new developments in this part of their territory. You know, who knows, it could change, but I can't see it happening anytime soon. And except for this one little section right over here, there's actually a casino right here called the Grey Eagle Resort and Casino. It's actually pretty cool. I think it's the biggest casino in the Calgary area. And so let's move into Lakeview itself here. So this is one of the most popular neighborhoods in the entire city. And there are two parts to it. So I'll actually pull up the satellite view here so you can see it a bit better. So there's this section right over here. This is called Lakeview Village. And then the main part of Lakeview is this section over here. So primarily a detached sector. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here. So primarily a detached market, but this little pocket right over here of townhouses, and they range in price from about, say, $300,000 to $500,000. But everything else around here, it's all detached homes. And in this part of Lakeview, like the normal part of it, not normal, like the regular part of it, the average price is about $700,000, and like the bulk of activities is ranging from like say $600,000 to maybe $900,000. And this section right here is called Lakeview Village. Now this is extremely pricey, one of the most expensive parts of the city. I would say the average price in this pocket of Lakeview is like 1.1 million, but sales can get up to say like 3 million, maybe even higher in this neighborhood. Very cool part of the city. Now this whole region is fairly flat. It's not as hilly as other parts of the west side, but it's great for nature lovers. So I'll zoom out here again so you can see it a bit better. So we have the Earl Grey Golf Course over here. We've got the Lakeview Golf Course right here. I believe this is the Calgary Golf and Country Club. And there's, you know, a bunch more to the west as well. So it's great for nature lovers. And this park right here, which you can see in the background of my video playing, it looks like you're in a different, it looks like you're not even in the city. It looks like you're way out in the country somewhere. It's definitely a very scenic neighborhood full of parks, and it's great for outdoorsy people. And you can see on the map here, right next to Lakeview is this tiny pocket right here, which is actually part of North Glenmore Park, which is this neighborhood right here. A bit of an odd neighborhood in that the freeway is actually dividing the north half to the south half. So North Glenmore Park covers everything in this region right here. So south of 50th Avenue and all the way down here to the edge of this development that you see here is North Glenmore Park. And this section over here, it's popular for all the same reasons that I mentioned in Lakeview. And it's quite expensive in here. There are homes between like 1 to 2 million in this area. And so I don't think it's as expensive as Lakeview Village, but maybe more expensive than the typical part of Lakeview. I'll pull up the satellite view here. So a lot of these homes can back right onto the Earl Grey Golf Course. So it is a prime area. Now the one drawback to this part of North Glenmore Park is I think there's power lines. I think it runs from here to up here. I'd have to double check, but I can recall having a listing here years ago, and it was very tough to sell because of the power lines. So a lot of buyers don't like that. So it depends where you're at in this neighborhood, but for the most part, it's a fantastic neighborhood. And if we move to this part of North Glenmore Park, it's like a quieter version of Altadore, which if you watched my inner city video, we covered that. Altadore is like the Marda Loop area, very popular part of Calgary. And I'm just waiting for the screen to load here. So Marda Loop is this section over here. This big section is referred to as Marda Loop. Lots of bars and restaurants and cool stores up here. And North Glenmore Park and Altadore, they're pretty much the same neighborhood, I think. I just find this area is just a bit quieter than this part of Altadore. Homes in this region of North Glenmore Park, if they're older homes, I would say they're running between 500 to 1 million, depending if they're renovated or not. And for brand new developments, I think they can range from 1 million to 2 million. This is a fine area for like the renovators and investors and builders. You can easily take these old like 1950s bungalows with big lots and start a new project on them. Lots of new developments in this area. And again, it's good for very outdoorsy type people. We have the athletic park over here. We've got lots of golf courses, the reservoir. One of the nicer areas of the city, and I would consider it inner city, even though it is classified as on the west side. To me, it's just the continuation of Altadore, which is part of the inner city. So moving along, let's talk about Garrison Green, which is this tiny pocket right over here. So on the Google Maps, this section right here, not a very big neighborhood. And so with Garrison Green, with CFB Currie, and the last one is Garrison Woods, which will be over here. These three areas make up the former military base called CFB Currie. So I guess the troops moved somewhere else, and they've turned the old base into brand new houses and developments. And a lot of the old military buildings are actually becoming like stores and restaurants and stuff like that. So it's a pretty cool area. And of the three areas I mentioned, so Garrison Woods, CFB Currie, and Garrison Green, I would say Garrison Green is probably the cheapest of the three. And so let's get into the numbers here. So in Garrison Green, it has everything. So there are condos, there are brick townhouses, and there are some luxury homes as well. And the condos range, I would say, 200,000 to 300,000. The townhouses are like 300 to 500. And the detached homes are like, say, 600,000 to maybe 900,000. Not as expensive as like CFB Currie, but still a very nice neighborhood, very, very convenient location. The one thing that I don't like about this area is you will get traffic noise from both Glenmore Trail right here and Crowchild Trail this direction. But it is pretty prime location. It's right next to the Mount Royal University here. And I'll pull up the satellite view so you can kind of see what's going on here. So this bottom portion right here is Garrison Green, and you can see all the buildings here. This section right here, it looks like it's under construction here, but it's actually been developed since the satellite view was taken. And it's kind of like a commercial office building park. There's lots of buildings here. And again, the Mount Royal University is right over here. And there's more buildings that are being constructed right now in the CFB Currie barracks, which we'll talk about shortly. And the last thing that I'll mention about Garrison Green, and it's the same for Currie Barracks and Garrison Woods, is that the neighborhoods all have a very, kind of like a village vibe to them where you can walk everywhere. They've incorporated like parks next to office space, next to homes. So everything is it's a very close-knit and you can walk everywhere. Almost like a European type atmosphere. So it's a pretty cool neighborhood. Next up is the neighborhood of Lincoln Park, which you can see right here. Now it looks like it's a fairly decent-sized neighborhood, but if you pull it up on the map, it's primarily just Mount Royal University is located in this area. But there's a section of condos right over here and some over here, kind of surrounding the university, and they range in price from about $150 to say $400, give or take. But most of these are around like between the $200 to $300 range. And that's all I can really say about Lincoln Park. Again, it's just primarily the university that covers this neighborhood. Now, if we move north of the university, we come across this neighborhood of Rutland Park. So I'll show you the map. It's a bit of a triangular shape. So it starts right here and it comes up. So everything in between Sarcee Road, 32nd Avenue, and 37th Street, this is what's called Rutland Park. And on the satellite, you can see it a bit better. So the southern portion of this neighborhood is all townhouses right here. You can see the townhouses. Entry-level townhouses, they range in value from like say 200 to 300,000. This kind of this maze-like section that you see here, this is a giant rental complex. And then if we move north of that, so you can see the park right here. This is what is Rutland Park. And this is the main part of the neighborhood. This is all like mature bungalows that range in value from say like 500 to 700,000. And you see the odd project in here that might be fixed up or it's been like renovated or they knocked down and put a new home there. And those might be pushing 1 million. You don't see too many of them yet, but over time, I think you will start to see more projects in this neighborhood. So it could be an area to buy and hold, because I think over time, as the city grows, you're going to start to see more developments in this neighborhood. And other than that, there's not a huge amount to discuss in terms of Rutland Park. Okay, let's go over CFB Currie in more detail now. And again, this is the most expensive of the 3 military bases. So CFB Currie is located right in this kind of the circular section right here. So just north of Mount Royal University, CFB Currie. And again, this is the priciest of the 3. And the average price of a detached home in this neighborhood is about 1.1 to 1.2. So quite expensive. And I've seen sales in here up to like $2.5 million. So it can get very pricey. Lots of brick townhouses in here. So the same kind of idea as Garrison Woods, where it has everything in close proximity. So it's like a village type atmosphere. Lots of brick townhouses, which can range from like say 500 to 600,000. But there are some luxury options that I've seen some go for like 1.5 million as well. And there are also lots of condos in here too. So actually I'm going to pull up the satellite view here for you. Lots of condos as well, and they can range in value from, say, 200,000 at a low, and I've seen some go over 1 million as well for some of the luxury penthouse condos. So it's hard to pinpoint the price because it does range quite a bit, but primarily it is an expensive neighborhood. And again, like I mentioned earlier, it has all of these, it's a mixed-use neighborhood, so it's got parks, lots of green paths and parks, lots of different commercial-type buildings, good access roads on Richmond Road, 33rd Avenue, Crowchild. The one thing I don't like about this neighborhood is it's a bit of a maze. You can easily get lost in this neighborhood. It seems like whenever I come in here, I'm lost. And there's absolutely no parking in this neighborhood. Like I've shown properties here and I'm parked like 400 meters away, it seems like. They didn't plan out the parking in this neighborhood all that well. And it does have a bit of a claustrophobic type feeling. It is very tightly put together. So it's a very cool neighborhood, but the last thing that I'll mention that I don't like about it is that it's still under construction in many parts of the neighborhood, but eventually that will go away. But at the moment, I'd say it's half built and another half is still under construction. Next up are the 3 neighborhoods of Killarney, Shaganappi, and Scarboro, Sunalta West. Now you'll notice they're purple. The Calgary Real Estate Board does classify these areas as inner city, but they're kind of at the point where they could be considered inner city or west side. So I'm going to cover them in this video as well. And if you are curious about some of the inner city neighborhoods, I actually have a video specifically on where to live in the inner city of Calgary, which you can find right up here. And I'll start with Killarney. So where this is located is in between 17th Avenue, 37th Street, Richmond Road. And actually the neighborhood of Richmond, it actually comes out kind of like this and then down like this. So it's a bit of a weird design. So Killarney is kind of shaped like this. It's a bit hard to describe. And on the satellite map, actually I'll zoom in again, sorry. So Killarney, not that far at all from downtown. So it's close enough to downtown where it's a pretty busy neighborhood, but it's still far enough from downtown where it does have a residential vibe to it. And so I'll pull up the satellite view again. And this is one of those neighborhoods that has like an equal mix of everything. So you'll see a lot of luxury detached properties being developed in this neighborhood. And they can range in value even pushing $2 million, so it can get pretty pricey. Some of the older homes, the starter homes that were built like in the 40s and 50s, they can range in value from say like 400,000 up to 700,000. And then some of those homes that are fixed up, they might even go from like say 700 to 800,000, give or take. There are lots of semi-detached properties in this neighborhood. So this, again, this area is one of those that the zoning allows for almost anything. So you'll find tons of these older 1950s bungalows that have been turned into duplexes. And for some of the older type duplexes, they might range around like 500 to 600,000. But some of the brand new ones can be pushing 1 million. You can see some of the photos that I have in the background. That's a home that I just sold in Killarney. That one I think we sold for $875. It's a brand new luxury semi-detached duplex. And it was right over here, close to 37. And Along 17th Avenue up here, you can see there's lots of different condo developments. You know, condos in this area might be between like 150 to 300. And if you look down here, there are some townhouses. There's some townhouses throughout the area as well, and they can range anywhere from, say, 300 to 600,000. So it's a good area. It's got an equal mix of everything. Now, there are a few things that I don't like about the neighborhood, but they are minor annoyances. And that the first one, it is a bit of a construction zone. It is a popular neighborhood, so everything is being redeveloped. So lots of construction going on. And the other thing I don't like is there's actually not much for park space in Killarney compared to other parts of Calgary. Calgary is known for having a lot of green paths and stuff like that. And I find you can just see from the map here, it is a bit of a kind of like a concrete grid. There's not much for park space in this area. But that said, there are a lot of parks if you just a short commute away though. So they are minor annoyances. But for the most part, it's one of the most popular neighborhoods in the city. So moving along from Killarney, we come across the area of Shaganappi. Now it looks like a big neighborhood, but it's actually not. If I pull it up here on the map, most of that neighborhood space that you saw is actually the golf course here. Shaganappi Point Golf Course, which is right here. And the residential part of Shaganappi, it's in between Bow Trail, 17th Avenue, 33rd Street right here, and 24th Street. So just this tiny little sliver right here. And it's basically an extension of Killarney. So everything that I mentioned about Killarney applies to Shaganappi. And so along 17th Avenue on both sides, so on the Killarney side and the Shaganappi side, you'll see different condo and townhouse projects. Again, the same prices. Condos are like 150 to say 300. The townhouses are like 200,000 to 400,000. Lots of semi-detached duplexes in here, and again, they will top out for the brand new ones around $1 million. And then the luxury detached homes will be $1 million plus. And the other thing to mention here, for both areas, Killarney and Shaganappi, is that there are 2 C-train stops. There is one right here and one over here. So we've got good proximity to transit as well. And that's a good quick rundown of the Shaganappi region. The last little pocket that we'll touch on in this region is called Scarboro Sunalta West. So this little sliver right here. And so I'll pull it up. So here is Sunalta, and here is Scarboro. And across the freeway, this little sliver that you see over here is called Scarboro Sunalta West. And so I'll pull up the satellite view here so you can see it. Now, as you're going down Bow Trail, you're going downhill the entire time until you get to about over here. And so these properties are on a ridge, and they've got fantastic views of the city skyline. So the homes in this little pocket could be quite pricey. Now the price of like the older like 1950s, 60s bungalow that might not have the views of the downtown could be around say 600,000. But some of these bungalows have been transformed into brand new properties with excellent views, and I've seen some that are pushing like around $3 million. So it can be very pricey. And it's one of those areas that we just don't come to all that often. I just a handful of sales in the past like 500 days, but it is a very cool area. It's just basically on a ridge with excellent views of downtown, and it can be very pricey. Other than that, there's really not too much to say about this area. All right, to wrap it all up, I'm going to cover the 3 areas of Medicine Hill, Crestmont, and Valley Ridge. So I'll pull up the satellite view here. So this is Cougar Ridge that we talked about earlier, and this is that giant ridge that kind of separates the west side from the northwest. I've always considered these 3 neighborhoods to be in northwest Calgary, but I will cover them here because they are, I guess, considered by the real estate board to be west side. So here is Canada Olympic Park. Like the ski jumps are over here, the bobsleigh, and the ski hill. You can't really see it all that well from the satellite view. And this portion over here, this winding road that you see, this is all a brand new development. So there's going to be like apartment buildings, there's going to be condos and townhouses, lots of stores being developed. With the history of the MLS, there's only been 9 sales recorded, so it's still being developed. So I don't know all the pricing figures yet, but all the properties that were sold on the MLS were in the 500,000 range. So I'm assuming that the condos and townhouses will be the typical prices that you see in this region, from like say 300 to 600-ish. But not too much to talk about yet because the area is still being developed. But it will be a cool area when it's finished. Great for someone that works at COP, the Canada Olympic Park, or for people that love to go to the mountains. It's an easy way to get out of the city very quickly. So I'll just show you here. So Medicine Hill will be right about here, and you could easily just jump onto the Trans-Canada Highway, and the mountains are just a short commute to the west. Other than that, there's not a huge amount to talk about at the moment regarding Medicine Hill. Next up, let's talk about Crestmont, this area right over here. Now it's kind of off on its own. It doesn't really feel like the west side of Calgary or northwest Calgary, just off on its own. So it's this little pocket right here. A very scenic neighborhood. I'll pull up the satellite view. So it's a very hilly neighborhood. So the base of the hill starts right here, and then it goes straight up, and the summit is about over here. And it's kind of also tilted on its side. So it's just a sloping neighborhood with a bit of a summit over here. It's the easy way to describe it. And it's very scenic. Most of the homes are detached properties that range in value from, say, $600,000 to $1 million. But there's the odd one here and there that's around the summit with excellent views of the Rockies, and it might be going for like $1.5 million. So it is a bit of a pricey neighborhood still. And there are some townhouses in here as well that might go from about, say, $400,000 to $600,000. And there's not too much to discuss other than that. It's a great neighborhood for people that like to go to the mountains. Again, you can easily jump onto the Trans-Canada Highway and escape all the traffic in Calgary. And the one gripe about this area, actually two gripes, is for the longest time there wasn't that many amenities in this part of Calgary. But you can see from the construction, there's construction all over this part of Calgary, and they're really making a lot of new shopping centers and stuff like that. So it is changing rapidly, and there will be a lot more things to do in this part of Calgary. And the last thing I'll mention here is this whole area is under construction right now. So I'll zoom out here. Actually, I'll switch to this view instead. I talked about this earlier. This is the ring road that goes all the way around the city. And right now it's complete all the way here until we get to this patch over here. I think we might still be like a year or two out from this being fully complete. And it will eventually come out right here if I zoom back in. Sorry, this program takes forever to load. So again, here is Crestmont, and you can see the ring road construction is right along this corridor. So this whole region is under construction right now, and it can be kind of annoying. But again, we're almost finished, maybe a year or two out from being fully complete. And it will really open up this part of Calgary to the northwest and the other parts of the west side, which I think will really make this area just, it'll be more lively for sure. All right, we're almost finished. And last up is the neighborhood of Valley Ridge, right over here. And so we just covered Crestmont, which is over here, and now Valley Ridge is this section right over here. So it's one of the golf course communities in Calgary. And the Valley Ridge course, I would say it's probably like a championship style course. It's a pretty famous course in Calgary, very nice. And you can see a lot of the homes are backing right onto the golf course. And so primarily a detached home market, but there are pockets of condos, which you can see right over here. There's a bunch of condos, and they're ranging in value from, say, $300,000 to $400,000. There are some townhouses around here and some villas, which are like $400,000 to $600,000. And there are houses throughout, which are, I'd say they're roughly about $500,000 to $1 million. Now there's the odd one here and there that might be pushing like $1.5 million. But for the most part, they're ranging in value from, say, $500,000 to $1 million. And similar to Crestmont, it has the same pros and cons. Again, there's construction and there's a lack of amenities at the moment, but that is changing rapidly. Other than that, not too much to say about Valley Ridge. If you're looking for like a quieter, kind of like a retirement type community with excellent golf, I would definitely look at Valley Ridge.
Well, that covers my rundown of the west side. Lots to take in there, and if you have any questions whatsoever about living on the west side, either buying or selling, feel free to reach out. You can either call, text, email, or comment, and I'd love to help you out. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.